Okay, fair enough. So I wanted to ask you just a handful of questions when we reached out to our community and told them we were going to interview you. There was a theme in terms of some of the questions that we got. Of course, at the top of some person's list was how you're gonna be addressing just, I guess, the increased prevalence of fraud that we're seeing. So, the messages, the fake websites, all of these things that we're seeing that somehow seems now more amplified in this digital world that we're in. So what are some of the steps that you are taking to improve on that? I know that there was an announcement about a reduction in the limits at the investor briefing, which would have helped with some of that. But what are some of the other things that you're doing to help to mitigate that risk?
So what's visible is so a big part of it is the biggest thing visibly is customer education. And so that would be the most visible thing that we do, and it's and we were doing it, and we're doing more, and we'll just have to keep doing more and more of it, because it's like having the key to your house and then allowing somebody to make a copy of it. But it's just that when it's digital, people are getting, the scammers are tricking people into allowing somebody to make a copy of their key to the house. And so we have to keep educating customers on what it looks like when somebody is trying to get you to allow them to make a copy of the key to your house. So the customer education thing is the most visible. And the second thing that's the most visible would be the limit changes. And that's about saying, protecting severity is important. You could use health analogies. You could use seatbelts in cars as an example. Seatbelts in cars doesn't reduce the number of accidents. It just reduces the severity of an accident. And so lowering the limits is about helping people say, we can't create an accident-free world, but we can help you reduce the severity. Then in between those, there's a whole lot of investment behind the scenes that people don't see, which is in trying to be smarter than the fraudsters. And so we spend a lot of money on systems that enroll the customer in saying, hey, take a look. We're going to give you the tool to monitor all the activity in your account in real time. So if you're on an app, you might be seeing every single transaction that's going through your account, getting an alert, and you're seeing that all the time. And so we're enrolling the customer then in saying, we need to make it easy for you to monitor your account all the time. And that takes a fair amount of technology. The other part is actually just unusual activity monitoring. So things that are not consistent with your past behavior. So it says, you don't normally do this. And the smarter and smarter our systems can get on what each individual's customer behavior is, then it'll be better able to recognize what is not consistent with that customer's behavior. That's a bit of a race between, the fraudsters are always trying to come up with ways to impersonate people, better. And we invest in technologies that help us detect when somebody is impersonating somebody else better. And so a lot of investment in technology and processes behind the scenes that people don't see, that goes into just trying to prevent fraud. But the two most visible things that enroll the customer is education and providing information that allows the customer to self-monitor their own accounts and be. So on the one part, we educate them to be vigilant. On the other part, we give them the tools to help them be vigilant.
Okay. So how do you help to, I guess in now, not necessarily even a medium to long term, how do you improve that ability for the customer to report said fraud or to to just kind of manage the process as it happens now, right? So in real time, if something happens to my account now, what's the most efficient way, or how do you improve that, either the validity of the reporting, or the process through which I have to go to, of course, remedy the issue that might have happened.
Yeah. So yeah, no, that's a great question, Jermaine. Like it's saying, the beauty of the electronic world is when everything works well, it's fantastic. It's so easy for all of us. The convenience is great. The problem is when it stops working, and in this case, it doesn't stop working because it just didn't work. It stops working because you have to turn it off because somebody has hacked in or somebody has done something where they've compromised your account, and now you're cut off from that electronic access. And the one of the other areas that we're very focused on is on the speed of remediation. So one is back to that idea, like we notify you, you have an easy way. I mean, right now you can call. We're trying to take the approach more of in some cases where, like I said, with the limits, where we're actually putting the block on first, and then you as the customer have to request for a limit increase. So just change that a bit more. Otherwise, it's about making sure that when there's if your account's being compromised, that we credit it quickly, and we remediate and help you out with that. Get your account back into a working order as quickly as possible and faster than we have been. And so our focus is on speed of remediation. So reduce severity and increase speed of remediation.
Okay. So the last question I'll ask about this is, there was a recent report about an NCB employee. I won't get into the report, but how do you address now maybe measures or controls from an internal perspective to protect your employees, your customers, etc.?
Again, I think the public would be surprised at the extent of controls that exist inside of a financial institution. And but similarly, as I said, on the behavior monitoring, tracking, internally, the same thing happens. So the same way that so there are a whole lot of controls, but we're increasing the extent of monitoring again for behavior that is not, that you don't need to take. So to illustrate a bit, it would be like saying you don't need to have clicked on that account or on that website, and you did. So you can imagine the extent of in the extreme. That's what one is trying to get to, is to get to the point of saying every time an employee is looking at information or touching information, there has to be a way of knowing that it was absolutely necessary, and there is continuous tracking so that you can enable full forensics. And that, again, requires more technology. This kind of goes back to why I said it's a scale game in financial services, because every one of these tools costs more money, and we keep on putting on more of these tools. You will hear more about NCB, you'll hear about more about NCB fraud than others, just because we're bigger than everyone else. Our fraud incidents our data would show that our fraud incidence levels on a per customer basis are lower than the industry. And we would expect that because we invest more money in fraud prevention than most, because we're bigger than most. So we do that. We have to do more. So there are more tools, again, that we spend on every single day. Hardly a day goes by that we're not investing in some new tool to monitor both internal and external fraud.
So I was actually going to ask you if you thought just the reporting may be skewed, because I do think the same, that maybe you hear more incidents sounding like it's coming about NCB simply because you are in the position that you're in. So I'm happy that you said that